My friend, gathering with you all will be an amazing experience. Today, I am going to show you something that has the potential to completely change your lifestyle. It's something deep, something meaningful, something that can shift the way you see the world and yourself. You see, we all go through moments where things don't seem to be right. We might face confusion, frustration, or even fear. But have you ever stopped to wonder if those moments are not just random? What if God is trying to warn you? Yes, today I want to talk about how God might be trying to warn you. We often think of warnings as negative, as something to avoid or fear. But today I want you to see warnings not as threats, but as loving invitations from a Father who knows what lies ahead. He's not trying to harm you. He's trying to protect you and lead you to greater things. God is trying to warn you. Have you ever thought about it in that way? So often we go through life bustling from one task to the next, caught up in the noise of the world, that we fail to notice the subtle ways God is trying to speak to us. We get distracted, and sometimes we even ignore the signs that He is showing us. But the truth is, God, in His infinite wisdom and love, often sends us warnings to help guide us, to protect us, and to direct us toward a higher purpose. It's not always in the loud, obvious moments. In fact, it's usually in the quieter, more intimate whispers that He is reaching out to us. Sometimes God's warnings come in the form of feelings. Those nudges in your heart that something isn't right, or that deep, unsettling sense that you're not on the path you're meant to be on. It's not always easy to recognize them, but they are there. These little signs, whether it's a moment of doubt, an unexpected change, or even a sense of discomfort, are invitations to pause, to reflect, and to listen more closely to what God is trying to tell you. They are not meant to harm you or punish you, but to guide you toward a path that is more aligned with your true self, with your higher calling. Perhaps you've had moments in your life where things felt too perfect, too smooth, and yet, deep down, there was a feeling that something wasn't quite right. Maybe you brushed it off, thinking it was just a passing thought, but then things started to unravel, and you realized that you ignored a warning. In those moments, God wasn't trying to catch you out or trick you. He was giving you a choice to listen, to act, to change before things took a turn. God doesn't make mistakes. His love is not just about comfort, but also about protection. He loves you enough to give you that warning because He knows the way forward may not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. At times, the warning might be clearer. Maybe a situation in your life falls apart in ways you didn't expect, or perhaps the same problem keeps resurfacing in different forms, pushing you to pay attention. When something keeps coming up, when patterns start to emerge, that's often God gently tapping you on the shoulder, asking you to look within, to evaluate where you are and where you're headed. He's not angry or disappointed with you. He simply wants the best for you. Sometimes we can't see the danger ahead, but He can, and in His love, He wants to protect us from it. God's warnings are not harsh or critical. They are always filled with compassion, urging us to make a change before we get too far off course. But the key is, we have to be willing to listen. We have to open our hearts and our minds to the possibility that perhaps we are not on the right path, that maybe we've been resisting change, or maybe we're just too comfortable to make the necessary adjustments in our lives. But God is calling us to something greater. He is calling us to step into our purpose, to grow, and to trust that He is guiding us every step of the way. It's easy to ignore God's warnings when we're caught up in the busyness of life, when everything seems fine on the surface. But the truth is, these warnings are not just for our survival, they are for our flourishing. They are there to help us grow into the person we were always meant to be, to lead us to a life of abundance, peace, and fulfillment. If we ignore these signs, we may miss the opportunity for transformation. God is trying to get our attention, not to bring us down, but to raise us up. And the beautiful thing is that even when we do ignore His warnings, God doesn't give up on us. His love never fades. His patience never runs out. He is always there, waiting for us to turn back to Him, to listen, to trust. The warnings may come in different forms, through people, through events, or through that quiet voice within us. But the message is always the same. God is trying to lead us to something better. He's trying to keep us safe, trying to help us avoid the traps that are set before us. And sometimes those warnings are not just for us. They're for the people around us, for the relationships we build, and for the impact we have in the world. In the end, it's all about trust. Trusting that God knows the way forward even when we don't. Trusting that His warnings are rooted in love, not in control or fear. And trusting that when we listen to Him, we open the door to blessings beyond what we could ever imagine. God is trying to warn you, not because He wants to make your life harder, but because He wants to make it richer, fuller, and more aligned with His beautiful plans for you. So take a moment today, listen, open your heart, and ask God, what are you trying to tell me? You may be surprised by the peace, the clarity, and the direction that follows. Recognizing the signs is not always as easy as it sounds. Often we move through life at such a fast pace that we don't take the time to pause, reflect, and truly see what is being presented to us. We're busy with our daily routines, our goals, and our responsibilities. But deep within the hustle of life, there are signs, small, sometimes subtle nudges, that God is trying to get our attention. These signs aren't always obvious, but they are always there, waiting for us to notice them. The question is, are we paying attention? Are we open to seeing what is right in front of us? Life often speaks in whispers, not shouts, and just as we don't hear the whispers of those around us when we're distracted, we also miss the divine whispers when we're not attuned to them. The signs that God presents to us can appear in many forms. A moment of stillness that causes us to reflect, an unexpected encounter with someone, a series of events that seem to align in ways we can't explain, or even an inner feeling that won't go away. These signs may seem random, but they are anything but. They are part of a grand design, a deeper plan that is unfolding in our lives, and it is up to us to recognize them. One of the most powerful signs that God presents to us is through our emotions. Have you ever had a feeling that something just wasn't right? Maybe you didn't have all the facts, but deep in your spirit, you sensed that something needed to change. That feeling is not coincidence. It is God speaking to you. It's easy to brush off these emotions as merely being the result of stress or worry, but often they are an invitation to pause, reflect, and consider whether the direction you're heading is truly the one you're meant to be on. These emotional nudges are not to be ignored. They are the gentle whispers of divine guidance, urging us to take notice and realign if necessary. Other signs come in the form of patterns. Have you ever noticed that certain situations or challenges seem to repeat in your life? Maybe there's an area in your relationships, your career, or your personal growth where you face similar struggles over and over again. These repeated patterns are not coincidences. They are signs that something needs to change. God uses these recurring situations to point us toward growth and transformation. If we keep running into the same wall, perhaps it's time to step back and ask ourselves, what is this trying to teach me? What am I meant to learn from this? Recognizing these signs is the first step in breaking the cycle and moving toward the growth that God is inviting us into. Sometimes the signs appear in unexpected moments. You might be going about your day when something happens, an unexpected conversation with a friend, a chance encounter with a stranger, or even a sudden shift in your perspective that makes you think about things in a new light. These moments are not accidents, they are divine appointments, opportunities that God has placed in your path to help you see the world differently, to guide you in a direction you may not have considered before. When these moments happen, it's important to stop and ask yourself, why did this happen? What is God trying to show me through this? In some cases, the signs can be more direct. You might find yourself in a situation that challenges you or makes you uncomfortable. Perhaps you've been faced with a decision that requires courage, a decision that calls you to step outside of your comfort zone. These direct signs can feel overwhelming, but they are often the most powerful. When God presents us with these challenges, it's not to test us, but to strengthen us. These moments are invitations to trust in God's plan, to rely on His strength, and to embrace the growth that comes with stepping into the unknown. The key to recognizing the signs is learning to quiet our minds and listen. In a world full of noise, it's easy to miss what's happening around us. We're constantly bombarded with information, with opinions, with distractions. But the more we learn to quiet our hearts and minds, the more we will begin to recognize the signs that God is showing us. It's in the stillness that we hear His voice most clearly. It's in the quiet moments that we can truly hear the guidance He's giving us. And as we begin to recognize these signs, we also begin to recognize the love and care behind them. God isn't simply throwing random events into our lives. Every sign, every nudge, every moment is a reflection of His deep love for us. He knows the plans He has for us, and He is gently guiding us toward those plans. The signs are not just about avoiding danger or making the right decision. They are about drawing closer to Him, deepening our relationship with Him, and stepping into the fullness of who we were always meant to be. Recognizing the signs is not always easy, but it is always worth it. When we begin to pay attention, to listen to the whispers, to notice the patterns, and to embrace the moments that challenge us, we start to see God's hand at work in our lives. And as we do, we open ourselves to a greater understanding of His purpose for us, a purpose that is unfolding with each sign He gives us. So, let's learn to recognize the signs, not just with our eyes, but with our hearts, trusting that God is always leading us towards something greater. Warnings are often seen in a negative light, something to be avoided or feared. We think of them as signals that something bad is about to happen, or that we've made a mistake and need to be corrected. But what if we looked at warnings differently? What if we began to see them not as threats, but as opportunities? What if, instead of running from them, we embraced them as signs of divine care and guidance? Warnings are not punishments. They are loving invitations to step back, reassess, and realign ourselves with a greater purpose. The purpose of warnings is not to make us feel small or unworthy. It is not about pointing out all the ways we are falling short or telling us that we are somehow wrong. Warnings are given to us out of love, not out of criticism. They are God's way of guiding us back onto the path that will lead to our greatest good. Think of them as a parent's gentle hand, reaching out to steady us when we are about to stumble, or as a lighthouse shining in the distance, warning ships of the dangerous rocks ahead. They are there to help us avoid unnecessary pain, to help us grow, and to help us stay aligned with what we are truly meant to become. At times, the warnings are subtle. You may feel a nagging sense that something isn't quite right in your life, or a feeling of unease that you can't quite explain. These are not just random emotions. They are signs that something needs to shift. God uses these moments to gently nudge us, to help us recognize that we may be headed in the wrong direction. They are an invitation to pause and reflect, to ask ourselves, what is God trying to show me in this moment? These warnings don't come to condemn us, but to protect us. They allow us the chance to course correct before we veer too far off track. Other times, the warnings are more obvious. They may come in the form of a situation that forces us to face something we have been avoiding. Maybe a door that we've been trying to force open suddenly slams shut, or a relationship that we've been holding on to begins to unravel. While these events may seem painful or even confusing at first, they are often the clearest form of God's guidance. It's as if God is saying, "This isn't the path I've planned for you. There's something better ahead." We may not understand why things are happening the way they are, but the purpose behind these warnings is always for our good. They are a sign that we are being redirected towards something more aligned with our purpose. It's important to recognize that God's warnings are not there to punish us for the mistakes we've made. Instead, they are there to protect us from the consequences of continuing down a path that isn't right for us. Think about it for a moment. If we never received a warning before stepping into something dangerous, how many times would we unknowingly walk into harm's way? God, in His infinite wisdom, knows the dangers we cannot see, and so He warns us not to limit our freedom, but to protect it. He gives us the chance to choose, to make decisions that will keep us from unnecessary harm. The goal is never to restrict us, but to help us make choices that lead to life, peace, and fulfillment. In many ways, warnings also serve to remind us that we are not alone. God is not a distant figure, far removed from our lives, watching from afar as we make mistakes. No, He is intimately involved in every moment, guiding us, speaking to us, and showing us the way forward. Warnings remind us that we are loved, that God is watching over us, and that He cares enough to help us avoid danger. They are a reflection of His deep love and His desire for us to experience the fullness of life. When we hear those warnings, we are reminded that we are not abandoned, but rather cared for and guided with great compassion. Furthermore, warnings are meant to invite us into a deeper relationship with God. When we recognize them, we are called to trust more deeply, to rely on God's wisdom rather than our own. They require us to humble ourselves, to admit that we don't have all the answers, and to be open to the guidance He offers. It's easy to rely on our own understanding, to think we can figure everything out on our own, but warnings help us see that there is so much more to life than what we can perceive with our limited vision. They are an invitation to surrender, to lean not on our own understanding, but on the wisdom of the One who sees the beginning from the end. The purpose of warnings is also to help us grow. We don't grow when everything is easy and comfortable. Growth comes in the moments when we face challenges, when we have to choose to change, to shift our perspective, and to align ourselves more closely with God's will. Warnings push us out of our complacency, urging us to confront areas of our lives that need attention. They invite us to grow stronger, wiser, and more in tune with our higher purpose. Without them, we might remain stagnant, unaware of the potential we have to grow into something far greater. Ultimately, the purpose of warnings is to help us live the life we were always meant to live. They are not barriers to our happiness or our success. They are guides to a deeper, more fulfilling life. When we heed God's warnings, we allow ourselves to be shaped and molded into the people we were always meant to be. These warnings are not to be feared, but embraced, for they are the loving guidance of a Creator who knows exactly what we need to become all that we were made for. When God gives us warnings, how do we respond? It's a question that calls for reflection, because often, when we are presented with signs or nudges that something in our life is not aligned with God's will, our first instinct might be to resist or ignore them. It's easy to think we have everything under control, to dismiss that still, small voice urging us to slow down, to change course, or to reconsider our decisions. But how we respond to God's warnings can profoundly shape our lives and our spiritual journeys. So, how do we respond in a way that honors God and helps us align more fully with His purpose for us? First and foremost, we must cultivate a heart that is open to hearing God's voice. The world around us is noisy, full of distractions, and sometimes it can feel like we are drowning in the constant hum of daily life. But in the midst of this noise, God is always speaking to us. Whether through the circumstances of our lives, through the people around us, or through that quiet whisper within. To respond to His warnings, we need to create space to listen. This requires slowing down, setting aside time each day for quiet reflection, prayer, or meditation. When we take this time to still our hearts and minds, we make room for God's guidance to enter our lives. Often God's warnings come in the form of subtle nudges, those gentle moments when we feel unsettled or unsure about a decision. It could be an unexpected change in our circumstances, a feeling that something isn't quite right, or a recurring thought that we can't shake off. Our first response to these nudges should be curiosity and reflection. Instead of immediately dismissing these feelings or pushing them aside, we should take a step back and ask ourselves, what is God trying to tell me? Is there something I need to pay attention to? The more we practice the art of listening for God's voice, the more attuned we will become to His warnings. Another important aspect of responding to God's warnings is humility. When God warns us, it's not because He wants to criticize or punish us. It's because He loves us and desires the best for us. However, our response to these warnings can sometimes be marked by pride. We may resist God's direction because we think we know better, or because we are comfortable where we are and are unwilling to make changes. Humility, however, is the key to receiving God's guidance. When we humbly acknowledge that God's wisdom surpasses our own and trust that His plans are better than our own, we open ourselves to the growth and transformation He desires for us. Responding with humility means acknowledging that we don't always have all the answers and being willing to submit to God's will, even when it challenges our own desires or plans. Sometimes God's warnings come as a direct change in direction or a closed door in our lives. When this happens, it can be easy to become frustrated or discouraged. We might wonder why things aren't going the way we planned, or why a certain opportunity seems to be slipping away. But instead of giving in to frustration, we must learn to trust in God's timing and His plan for our lives. It's in moments like these that we are called to respond with faith. Faith is not just about believing when everything is going well. It's about trusting God even when we don't understand what's happening. When we encounter closed doors or detours, we must remember that God is sovereign over our lives. He knows what's best for us, even when we cannot see the bigger picture. Responding with faith means trusting that God is guiding us, even when the path ahead is unclear. There will also be times when responding to God's warnings requires taking action. God's warnings are not meant to leave us stuck in a state of indecision or confusion. They are meant to move us toward change. Sometimes God will call us to make difficult decisions or take bold steps in order to realign ourselves with His will. This might mean ending a toxic relationship, changing careers, moving to a new place, or giving up a certain habit that's been holding us back. Taking action in response to God's warnings requires courage. It requires us to step into the unknown with the confidence that God is with us every step of the way. While the decision might not be easy, responding with action means trusting that the change will lead us closer to the life God has for us. Finally, one of the most powerful ways to respond to God's warnings is with gratitude. It's easy to feel frustrated when we receive a warning. After all, it's often a sign that we've veered off track or that something in our life needs to change. But instead of seeing God's warnings as burdens, we can choose to view them as a gift. They are a reflection of God's love for us, a sign that He cares enough to guide us back onto the right path. When we approach God's warnings with gratitude, we begin to see them as opportunities for growth, for healing, and for deeper intimacy with God. Every warning He gives us is an invitation to come closer to Him, to become more aligned with His purpose, and to experience His love in deeper, more meaningful ways. Responding to God's warnings is not about perfection. It's not about always getting it right or making the perfect choice every time. Instead, it's about learning to trust, to listen, and to act with courage and humility. It's about recognizing that God, in His love and wisdom, is always guiding us toward what is best for us. As we learn to respond to His warnings with openness, faith, and action, we allow ourselves to grow into the people we were always meant to be, walking in the fullness of God's love and grace. Embracing growth and new opportunities is not always as easy as it sounds. We often face challenges when it comes to change, fear of the unknown, hesitation about stepping outside our comfort zones, and sometimes a deep-rooted belief that staying where we are is the safest choice. But when we choose to embrace growth, we are making a decision to step into a brighter future, one where possibilities are endless and where our potential can be fully realized. Growth, in any form, is an invitation from God to expand, evolve, and become more fully the person He designed us to be. The question is, are we ready to embrace it? Growth is not always a smooth journey. In fact, it can often feel uncomfortable. Think about how a seed grows into a tree. It first has to break through the soil, endure the harshness of the weather, and stretch beyond its current limitations. But in doing so, the seed transforms into something strong, beautiful, and capable of producing fruit. Just like that seed, we too must face moments of discomfort as we grow. But it's important to remember that growth is a process, not an event. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to trust that what is happening within us is leading us towards something far greater than we can imagine. When we embrace growth, we allow ourselves the space to become better versions of ourselves. It means being open to learning new things, developing new skills, and gaining new perspectives. We are all constantly evolving, whether we realize it or not. Every experience we have, every relationship we encounter, and every challenge we face contributes to the person we are becoming. But growth doesn't happen automatically. We must be willing to step into new experiences, try new things, and push past the fear that holds us back. When we are open to growth, we open the door to transformation. And in that transformation, we begin to realize our fullest potential. As we grow, we begin to see the world differently. We begin to understand that the opportunities we once thought were beyond our reach are actually within our grasp. God often presents us with opportunities that seem intimidating at first, but if we can let go of our fears and doubts, we find that these opportunities are the very things that will propel us forward. Whether it's a new job, a new relationship, a new challenge, or a new adventure, opportunities are always around us, waiting for us to take the first step. The key is to recognize them when they come and to have the courage to step into them, even if they seem uncertain. It's easy to get stuck in the comfort of what we know. It's easy to think that if we just stay where we are, we will be safe. But in doing so, we miss the very opportunities that are meant to help us grow. God has designed us for more than just comfort. He created us to thrive, to stretch beyond our limits, and to reach heights we never thought possible. When we allow ourselves to embrace growth, we allow ourselves to live out the fullness of our purpose. The opportunities we encounter are not random. They are part of the plan God has for our lives, guiding us toward the destiny He has designed for us. Sometimes, embracing growth and new opportunities requires letting go of old habits, old beliefs, or old relationships that no longer serve us. This can be one of the hardest parts of growth. We often hold on to what is familiar, even when it's holding us back. But if we want to step into the future God has for us, we must be willing to release the things that weigh us down. This doesn't mean abandoning the people or things that truly matter, but rather letting go of the things that are keeping us from moving forward. Growth requires change, and change often involves releasing the past so that we can step into the new. The beauty of embracing growth is that it doesn't just benefit us, it benefits those around us as well. When we grow, we become more equipped to serve others, to make a difference in the world, and to be a light to those who need it most. Our growth impacts our families, our communities, and even our workplaces. When we step into the opportunities God has placed before us, we are not only stepping into our own potential, but we are also opening the door for others to step into theirs. Growth has a ripple effect, spreading beyond us and creating positive change wherever we go. Moreover, growth teaches us resilience. Life is not always smooth sailing, and there will be setbacks along the way. But it's in those moments of difficulty that we truly learn and grow. When we face challenges, we have the opportunity to build character, perseverance, and strength. Every setback is a lesson, and every challenge is an opportunity to become more of who we are meant to be. Embracing growth means embracing the ups and downs, knowing that they are all part of the journey that is shaping us into stronger, more capable individuals. In all of this, it's important to remember that growth is a process, not an outcome. We don't grow for the sake of achieving something or reaching a particular destination. We grow because it is in the process of growth that we discover who we truly are and who we were always meant to be. The opportunities that come our way are not just chances to achieve success or gain recognition. They are invitations to dive deeper into the life God has for us. They are opportunities to learn, to stretch, and to become the best version of ourselves. So, as we stand at the threshold of growth and new opportunities, let us embrace them with open hearts and minds. Let us not fear change, but welcome it as a beautiful part of the journey. The world is full of possibilities, and when we choose to embrace growth, we step into the fullness of life that God has prepared for us. Every new opportunity is a chance to grow, to learn, and to become the person we are destined to be. And with each step we take, we move closer to living out our highest purpose.